Erin Bates, it's good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Great to see you, Tom. I'm doing great. How have you been?
Very good, very good. Yeah, happy days. It's been cool to watch your career over the last, because we were just talking about how long we've known each other and sort of seeing this last decade just fly by, but also to see kind of the growth that you've experienced personally and within the companies that you've joined, good ones, of course. It's been really wonderful to watch that rise.
That's great. Yeah, it's been a wild ride in the last decade for sure. Lots of great companies, lots of change, lots of market conditions change too. So it's definitely had the industry and the markets had their ups and downs, but it's been a really fun wild ride with some great companies. And really, thank you for having me
Yeah.
today.
Of course. And side note for our viewers, I don't know if they care for this or not, or if it's just sort of divulging personal work that we've done together in the past. I did place Austin, your husband, many, many moons
Yes.
ago. That was a good one for me.
Yeah,
And
it kicked off a really wonderful and amazing career for him, placing him at OpenDNS so many years ago. And I don't think that he'd be where he was if it wasn't for you placing him there. So thank you. It's been
really
great.
cool
He
to
says
see
hi,
it.
by the way.
Nice, nice. Hi from me. So we'll get straight into it. I wanted to just start off with getting some context on how many hires you've been a part of over the course of your career.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
have been-
it's hard to say. I've been in leadership for about 15 years and even before then been a big part of hiring panels and really helping to hire folks. Hiring is one of my passions, really hiring successful reps and top talent. I think if I could go back around the different roles that I've had, I'd say I've probably hired 300 to 400 new hires into the companies I've had over the last 15 years. And this is across, SDRs, account executives, customer success reps, solution reps, enablement, RevOps, probably about 300 to 400 folks. And that doesn't include promotions. If you also think about internal promotions that we've been a part of, it's probably another 150 to 200 in there. So it's been a lot. Thinking about the numbers, it's surprisingly large, but it's been a great opportunity in bringing in and building really amazing teams from the ground up.
Yeah. And speaking of building amazing teams, maybe more specifically on the hiring side, I think with those kind of numbers, there have to have been some interesting surprises maybe along the way. And I was curious to try and get your best and worst hiring surprise if we could.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's probably too many to count. I'll start with the best and I'll kind of end with the worst. But I think the best one was really making the wrong decision about a hire. It was a surprisingly best surprise here. This is when I was working at Checker and we were building out a sales development team, which is something new that we haven't had before. And I think we made a couple hires. And we were interviewing somebody that was coming in from a different industry, like outside of our typical persona that we like to sell into, or even just a type of solution. I think they were in ad tech and we were selling more of like a SaaS solution. So we decided to bring him on board as an SDR back where he was an AE at his current company, brought him on as an SDR. And within the first week, I went, oh, I made a really big mistake, a surprisingly good mistake, and realizing that he really should have gotten brought on as an account executive. And so I think within the next month, I promoted him back to AE where he rightfully deserved. And he worked with me at that company and we're still really close. He moved on into leadership and had been a really great role model. So that was a really great learning in terms of a great surprise that I had and just really making sure, again, I hire the right person for the right role. And I think I don't have like a specific one from a worst surprise. I mean, I do have some that I probably won't share, but a lot of them are just surprises of people embellishing on their resume. But especially there was one candidate that we ended up hiring that straight up lied about the role that they had before. And needless to say, integrity and trust is very important when you hire a team. And so just the importance for candidates not to lie on their resume, but also the importance to really back channel. That was earlier on in my career when we made that mistake. And I don't hire somebody without having at least one back channel from somebody else that I know or somebody in my network. Because you always people can lie on resumes and it can be really good at lying or just embellishing what they're doing. So it's just so
Yeah.
important to be able to cut through all that.
There's a couple of good examples. And we're talking about salespeople here. So, by all rights, they should be quite good at talking about themselves and their performance and their past. So I think that leads us nicely into our next question, which would be, in hiring those reps, you've probably been able to create a pretty good bullshit detector, how to spot a true performer from someone that's just really good at interviewing, like you said. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's definitely been some learnings. I think early on, making some poor hires because of just not having a good understanding of like the role that you're hiring for and what your needs are, but then also taking people for like what they're saying without kind of looking under the hood or asking level 2, level 3 questions. I look at hiring just like I would selling into a prospect or renewing a customer, is that you really have to do like deeper discovery. And so a big part of this is not just asking a question, saying cool and moving on. Be like, tell me more about that. And so asking behavioral questions is so important because it's not how would you do it, but how have you done it in the past? And then making sure you always ask 1 or 2 follow-up questions based off of something that they said is really great. I'll also ask the same question sometimes in different ways, either
Nice.
during that process or sometimes later on, to be able to sniff that out. I had a great example of a candidate in the first call, and he goes, I am the number 1 rep of the company. I've been the number 1 rep for the past few quarters. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Congrats. Like, that's really something to be proud of and accomplished. And towards the end of the interview, I said, oh, okay, great. So how many people are currently sales reps on the team? And he goes, 2.
Yeah.
So making it like a really big thing about how important it is and how big of an accomplishment it is being the best top performer. And the second person had just been hired the quarter before. So stuff like that, because again, trust and integrity I mentioned are so important, and just like knowing the core values that you're trying to bring on board. It's really easy again for people to frame it up in a certain way, but being able to ask like an additional question or ask it a different way, you can sometimes really sniff out some of that BS. So I have a lot of different tips and examples about how to do that, but it is really important because a bad hire can really be the reason you don't hit your numbers, because you have to unfortunately like rehire that person, or you bring someone on that you have to really level up their skill development. So it can be really, really tough, especially if they're really bad for the culture of the team as well.
And so nothing surface level, looking to go a few layers deep with the same lines of questioning just to see how the candidate responds to that. I love that. Also, I think you talked about the back channels earlier on. And so those worth their weight in gold, because it seems references alone don't really do, what they are intended to do. So those back channels are all important for getting maybe an unbiased or a true review of someone's performance.
Yeah, people will spill the tea if they don't know that they're the ones that are getting brought up for. If they know that somebody's asking me to be a reference, it's a whole lot harder than I know that this isn't going to go back to them. So you really get to cut through all the BS and get through the real stuff.
So having hired in the hundreds, there must have been a few maybe standout moments. I think interviewing alone is a interesting sort of concept. It puts people in maybe a sort of a high pressure environment, if you will, quite a lot on the line. Weirdest interview moment you've experienced, if you can.
Oh gosh, weirdest interview moment. I think this was back when we were all in person again. I know a lot of our people are hybrid and we do a lot of Zoom calls, but this is earlier on, back when you would come in for an interview and we would like fly people out. And I had somebody show up in flip-flops and a t-shirt and jeans to their interview. And the role definitely wasn't something like that. And we weren't fancy, but you typically dress like business casual at the company. Jeans are fine, but when you pair it with a semi-dirty tee and some sandals, some like rainbow sandals, it doesn't really show like how could you present. It was an in-person role of like doing a lot of traveling in front of customers. And so I think that was one of the first things. Is it didn't lead to a good interview. I think that the way that they showed up dressed also kind of went through with the rest of their kind of casual attitude through it. So that was one of the really weird moments. And then I also had a very weird moment where, again, this is in person. I'm very honest and transparent when people ask me for feedback. And I will tell people sometimes, like, if it's not a right fit out of the gates. And so that was an example where we did that. And that person actually like went to the bathroom and wouldn't leave. And we had to have security come and take them out because they wanted the job so bad. So that was a very strange moment as well. It definitely gave some weird vibes, but you get some strange reactions sometimes one way or the other.
I haven't, that's a new one for me. I have not heard that one. Well, at least it shows quite a high level of dedication, if nothing else.
Yes, exactly. He's like, I really want this job. I really want this job.
Oh my God. You've worked at some hyperscale companies, name brands. These are, companies that have done exceptionally well and also grown really fast. How do you hire quickly but keep the quality of your hires?
Let's see, in 1 year, we were growing. This is a company that I worked at previously. We were growing from 8 people to 80 people in the span of 1 year across even just 2 different roles on that team. And our numbers supported if you miss a hire, you're late on your hiring dates. Like, we are always catching up to that number. And it's really important to meet your hiring goals so that way you're hitting your financial plan, right? But hiring a bad person could be just probably worse than missing a hiring goal. And so I think one of the big things that I learned is the past of bringing in a couple people that you wanted to hit a hiring goal so bad that you hired a B player that you knew was a B player. And that was always a mistake. And so I think that even when you think you're bringing on an A player and hiring an A player, sometimes they turn out to be B players. Probably not C or D players, thankfully, but I think don't just hire people for the sake of hitting hiring goals. If you're not getting the quality of candidates that you need to hit your hiring goals, you need to either put more resources in. So one of the things we do is I have all my leaders source at least 5 candidates per week themselves on top of our internal recruiters. Sometimes if we need an external recruiter, we'll bring external recruiters on for just more difficult roles. And so just making sure that you're really putting the effort in to get more candidates and doing more touches and outreach. And that's the reason why. So you still hire a really high quality candidate. That would be the first thing that I would say is like, don't make that mistake of just hitting a hiring goal. Some of the big ones I'll say is know what you're looking for. Like, we are hiring a strategic and account executive. What does that mean? Are they selling into $1 billion plus revenue companies? Are they selling 10,000 plus employee size companies? Okay, great. So what is the experience that we need for them to be able to be a fit in this role? What are the core competencies that we need? So that would be technical experience, that would be soft skills as well. And of course, like hiring to culture. The first interview, if they don't hit your experience, you have to walk away. Like, there's too much at stake and everybody is way too busy to have a mediocre candidate make it to the end just to say no. So if you know you're on the fence, you know you're going to say no, just say no. And that's the big one. So know exactly what you're looking for and hire exactly to that. If you have a great candidate that's not a fit, maybe they're better in a CSM role or they're better as a SMB AE, just keep them warm and bring them back in the funnel if you don't have an opportunity for them, but don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. So I think that's one of the big ones is just know what you're hiring for and just make sure that you hire for that person. And the last one I'll say is just like always hiring candidates that may not necessarily be the perfect fit. I always say, if they have 70% of the qualities that you're looking for, hire that person. If somebody has 100% of what you're looking for, they're probably interviewing for the wrong role. And there's something up, right? So you want people to be hungry. You want people to know that they're not quite a fit, but they're a pretty good fit. And then just make sure that you have strong enablement and strong leadership to be able to fill that gap of that 30% that they don't have. So I think that's also like high potential people to me are more important than like very skilled people in a lot of ways, because they'll come in really hungry. And then if you can coach and enable them, those are always the best folks.
Love those examples. Thank you. Sort of to round things out, most important piece of wisdom on hiring that you wish you'd known earlier?
I actually touched on it just before, but I wasted a lot of minutes of my life, a lot of time of my life, keeping progressing candidates that I've been on a fence on and not just making the hard decision, right? Like, there's really good people out there and there's really good humans out there, but it's okay for them also not to be a good fit for the role. And sometimes I think we want to hire because we're talking to someone that we're connecting with. They passed the beer test and you would go and have a drink with them for happy hour, but they're not a good fit. And then at the end of the day, either you have an executive that comes over and goes, "What are you doing? Like, we're not going to hire this person." And now you've wasted a lot of people's time and cycles, or maybe you just ultimately say no. So to me, I always say a soft yes is a no. So if you are looking and you see a bunch of soft yeses or a bunch of maybes, you need to have, I'd rather have 3 people be a passionate yes and 2 people be a no. And there's obviously something there, as long as there's no red flags in the no's. But I'd rather have that than 5 soft yeses, because usually if you have a bunch of soft yeses, that person is not going to be a top performer and they're not going to really like take you to that next level. So hiring a force multiplier that really like raises all the tides so other people can learn. They do something new. They bring a new element to your team that you don't have today. That is so important. So you really want people to be passionate about the hires you have. So if you're on the fence or you're a maybe or oh, I'll just move them forward, it's probably a no, but let's just give them another chance. Just say no. It'll save you a lot of time. Like I mentioned, we're all way too busy in life right now to spend time on candidates that won't be a fit. So just knowing when to walk away really early on, I think is really important.
It's another good one. Just say no. I like it.
Say no.
Erin, well then, just to kind of finish, are you hiring right now, and who should be reaching out to you? And just to the audience and anyone else that might be listening, knowing Erin firsthand for many years, people that have worked under you have had phenomenal careers, done extremely well for themselves. Are you hiring, and who would you like to sort of reach out to or have reach out to you if they're interested?
Yes, we are hiring. We're always hiring, but yeah, we definitely are. We're looking for hiring across all different roles. We're hiring for account executives. We're looking at both an enterprise account executive, an expansion AE on the enterprise side. We're looking at customer success managers. Next week, we're launching a couple open roles for an SDR team, and we're looking across a couple different other roles across the business, even outside of revenue. And so definitely looking for people that have large enterprise experience, people that have experience managing customers, but in a very like revenue focused mindset, as they do own renewals and some expansions as well on the CSM side. That's how our org is set up. And then, yeah, if you know of any great SDRs, it's actually the first SDRs that we'll be having on the team. We have some BD roles today that do something a little bit different. So this will be, we're actually kicking back off the SDR role. So any good ones, send my way.
I know a lot of these topics close to your heart on hiring. Thank you for the wisdom, the knowledge. Very much appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate you having me on.